"You're fired. Leave now. You're done here." Brighton Walsh said it live on the investor call, right in front of everyone. No warning, no meeting, just a blowtorch to the throat while I was mid-sentence explaining our blockchain security protocols. I'm Jackson Rivers, by the way, 47 years old, and I've been building secure systems since before this kid knew what cryptocurrency was. I didn't flinch, didn't argue, just reached forward, closed the laptop, and walked to my kitchen window. Made myself a coffee while they scrambled on the other end of that call. Because here's what Brighton didn't know, what none of them knew. I'd been expecting this for weeks. Let me back up. 6 months ago, I wasn't even supposed to be at Block Secure Technologies. I was consulting for defense contractors, making good money, keeping my head down, built secure communications for Navy installations, the kind of work where failure means people die. You learn precision in that environment. You learn to build systems that don't break under pressure. My Navy training started when I was 22, 15 years of service, most of it in cryptographic systems and secure communications. We called it information warfare back then, but really it was about building unbreakable digital fortresses. Every protocol had backups. Every access point had multiple authentication layers. Every system was designed to fail safe, not fail open. When I transitioned to civilian tech, I brought that mindset with me. Cryptocurrency was just emerging, but I saw the potential immediately. Digital money needed military-grade security. The Wild West approach most startups were taking, throwing code together and hoping for the best. That was exactly how you ended up with catastrophic breaches. I spent 10 years building reputation in the crypto space, consulted for major exchanges, designed wallet architectures that never got hacked, wrote security protocols that became industry standards. Not flashy work, but essential work, the kind of expertise you can't fake or shortcut. Then Austin Wells called me up desperate. Block Secure was hemorrhaging users faster than a broken smart contract. Security breaches, regulatory violations, the whole mess. "Jackson, we need you," he said. His voice had that particular strain of a CEO watching his company circle the drain. "Remember Clause 7.3a from the original partnership agreement?" I remembered. I'd helped write that clause 3 years earlier during their initial architecture planning. Founding systems architect may be reinstated as critical infrastructure consultant in the event of operational emergency. Translation: when everything goes to hell, call Jackson. Austin explained the situation. Their platform was handling 50,000 cryptocurrency transactions daily, but their security infrastructure was held together with wishful thinking and 6-year-old encryption protocols. 2 major vulnerabilities had already been exploited. The SEC was asking pointed questions about their compliance framework. Venture capitalists were getting nervous. "We're 3 weeks from losing our banking partnerships," Austin admitted. "Without proper security certification, we can't process fiat currency exchanges. The whole business model collapses." So I came back. Not because I loved the company, but because I hate seeing good technology destroyed by incompetent implementation. And honestly, the consulting rate was excellent. First week, I audited their entire infrastructure. The problems were worse than Austin had described. Their wallet system used single-signature protocols that any decent hacker could crack. Customer private keys were stored in plain-text databases. Their API endpoints had more holes than a training range target. I spent 2 months rebuilding everything. Implemented multi-signature wallet architecture where transactions required cryptographic approval from multiple sources. Built encrypted key management systems that segmented customer data across distributed nodes. Created automated compliance reporting that tracked every transaction for SEC requirements. The work wasn't glamorous. While other consultants gave PowerPoint presentations about blockchain innovation, I was buried in code, writing the actual systems that made innovation possible. 16-hour days, debugging cryptographic protocols, testing failure scenarios. But it worked. Security breaches dropped to 0. Customer confidence returned. The platform started handling 200,000 daily transactions without a single compliance violation. Banking partnerships renewed. The SEC audit passed cleanly. That's when the problem started. See, nobody wants to credit the repair guy once the engine starts running smooth again. Austin started talking about fresh perspectives and new energy. The board wanted someone who could pitch to venture capitalists without mentioning all the technical debt I'd just cleared. I should have seen it coming. Military experience teaches you about mission creep, how objectives change once initial success is achieved. But I figured technical competence would speak for itself. I figured 25 years of experience building unbreakable systems would earn some respect. I was wrong. That's when Brighton Walsh showed up. 29 years old, MBA from Wharton, and her daddy sits on the board of Walsh Industries, a traditional manufacturing conglomerate trying to understand why their portfolio companies kept talking about digital transformation. Brighton's first day, she walked in wearing designer heels that probably cost more than most people's monthly salary. Started talking about disrupting the disruption space and leveraging synergistic blockchain paradigms. I swear these people collect buzzwords like trading cards. She had that particular confidence that comes from never being truly tested, never having a system fail catastrophically because you cut corners, never watching months of work evaporate because you didn't properly validate input parameters. But she had an MBA and connections, which apparently mattered more than actually understanding the technology she was supposed to manage. Brighton pulled me into a one-on-one her second week. Called it a sync, but really it was her trying to figure out what I actually did. We met in the glass conference room they'd nicknamed the Fishbowl. Appropriate, since I felt like I was being studied by someone who'd never seen my species before. "Jackson, I respect your background," she said, settling into her chair with the confidence of someone who'd never had a system crash at 3 a.m. because of a security flaw. "But I've been reviewing your section in the investor deck, and honestly, it's way too in the weeds." She had printed out my slides, 20 pages of technical specifications, security protocols, and compliance frameworks. Real documentation that explained how our platform could handle millions of dollars in cryptocurrency transactions without getting hacked or shut down by regulators. "Nobody wants to hear about multi-signature cryptographic protocols and zero-trust security frameworks," she continued, tapping her manicured nails on the table. "These investors want story, vision. They want to understand the user journey, not get a lecture from a cybersecurity bootcamp." I looked at her carefully. "And who's handling the SEC compliance reports when they come due next month?" She blinked. "Legal handles regulatory stuff. Legal files the paperwork," I said. "But someone has to generate the technical compliance data, validate the cryptographic audit trails, and certify that our security protocols meet federal banking standards. That someone is me." Brighton waved her hand like she was shooing away a fly. "I'm sure we can streamline that process, maybe outsource it to a compliance firm." That's when I knew she didn't understand what she was managing. You can't outsource cryptocurrency security compliance. It's not like hiring an accounting firm to do your taxes. Every transaction, every encryption key, every access protocol has to be designed, implemented, and monitored by people who understand both the technology and the regulations intimately. But Brighton had already moved on in her head. She started talking about optimizing our narrative framework and leveraging visual storytelling paradigms. I stopped listening and started planning. Over the next 3 weeks, I watched Brighton systematically dismantle the professional structure that had taken months to build. My access to strategy meetings started getting accidentally revoked. Calendar invites for important client calls somehow never reached my inbox. My name disappeared from email chains about the Series A funding round, even though my compliance documentation was being copied word for word into their due diligence packet. When I called it out, Austin gave me corporate doublespeak about streamlining communications and reducing noise in critical decision-making processes. Brighton just smiled like she'd solved a complicated equation. But here's what neither of them understood about blockchain systems. They're built on cryptographic trust chains. Every component depends on verified authenticity. When you start removing essential elements, the whole structure becomes vulnerable. I designed BlockSecure's infrastructure the same way I'd built Navy communication systems, with proper access controls, redundant verification layers, and fail-safe protocols. Not maliciously, just professionally. When you're responsible for securing millions of dollars in digital assets, you build systems that can't be compromised by internal politics or external attacks. That meant I had legitimate administrative access to critical infrastructure components, database encryption keys, API authentication protocols, regulatory reporting systems, all properly documented, all legally authorized, all necessary for maintaining security and compliance. I also had something Brighton didn't know about: deep knowledge of the legal framework we operated under. When Austin had brought me back 6 months earlier, I'd insisted on specific contractual protections, not because I was paranoid, but because I'd seen too many consultants get thrown under the bus after cleaning up other people's messes. Buried in the Series A term sheet, page 8, subsection 4.2, was a clause most people skip over because it's written in dense legal language. Technical compliance presentation must include direct participation from designated infrastructure architect Jackson Rivers, classified as mandatory contributor for funding validity. I'd negotiated that clause during the contract discussions. Seemed like reasonable insurance at the time. The lawyers had argued it was unnecessary, but I'd held firm. 25 years of experience had taught me that essential people become disposable the moment success makes their contributions seem routine. Brighton, meanwhile, was busy rewriting my investor presentation. My original section had 20 slides covering security architecture, compliance frameworks, and technical risk mitigation. She cut it down to 5 slides, replacing detailed technical specifications with stock photos of blockchain graphics downloaded from Shutterstock. One slide literally showed a cartoon padlock with the caption, "Enterprise-grade security solutions." Another featured a generic network diagram that had nothing to do with our actual infrastructure. She'd turned months of sophisticated technical work into a children's picture book, but I let her do it. Because buried in the backup systems I'd built was something she didn't know existed. Independent presentation nodes that could override the primary display system if properly authenticated. See, when you design secure infrastructure, you plan for compromise scenarios. What happens if the primary systems get corrupted? What happens if unauthorized users try to modify critical data? You build parallel systems that maintain integrity even when the main systems fail. I'd applied the same principle to our investor presentation. The shared folder Brighton was editing connected to the primary display system, but I maintained independent backup versions on distributed nodes she didn't even know existed, all properly secured, all professionally implemented, all completely legal. The morning of the investor presentation, I did my final system checks. Brighton's modified slides were loaded into the primary presentation system, but my authentication protocols were still active on the backup nodes. One cryptographic signature from my verified account, and the backup system would override the primary display. I didn't plan to use it. I hoped the presentation would go smoothly, that Brighton would handle the marketing sections while I covered technical compliance, professional division of labor. I should have known better. The investor presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. sharp. Diana Stone from Apex Ventures was leading a $30 million Series A round. Serious money from serious people who'd built their fortune understanding the difference between genuine innovation and expensive nonsense. I'd researched Diana before the call. Former CTO at 2 successful fintech companies, MIT computer science degree, 15 years of experience evaluating blockchain technologies. She'd personally overseen the technical due diligence for cryptocurrency investments worth over $200 million. The kind of investor who could spot technical incompetence from orbit. The call started with Austin's usual nervous energy. He bounced between buzzwords like hyperscale growth trajectories and market disruption dynamics, which basically meant we were processing more transactions than last quarter and hoped to keep growing. Diana sat there drinking coffee from a mug that said, "Show me the code," which should have been Brighton's first warning about what actually mattered to this investor. 3 other investors joined the call. Peninsula Capital, Sterling Ventures, and Blackstone Digital, all Tier 1 firms with technical expertise. These weren't marketing-focused investors who got excited about flashy presentations. They were engineers and former CTOs who'd made their money understanding complex technology. Austin handled the business overview competently enough. User growth metrics, revenue projections, market analysis, solid fundamentals that demonstrated we weren't just burning venture capital without generating actual value. Brighton sat quietly during this section, probably preparing her marketing pitch. Then Austin transitioned to product demonstration. Brighton Walsh, our VP of Product Strategy, will walk you through our platform capabilities and technical architecture. That's when Brighton came alive. She launched into a presentation that sounded like it was written by someone who'd learned about blockchain from Wikipedia articles and TED Talks. Phrases like revolutionary distributed ledger paradigms and synergistic cryptographic ecosystems filled the air like digital fog. I watched Diana's face grow more skeptical with each slide. When Brighton showed the cartoon padlock graphic and called it military-grade security visualization, Diana actually winced. These investors understood that real security came from mathematical precision, not stock photography. Brighton spent 15 minutes explaining how our user-centric transaction optimization framework created seamless cryptocurrency exchange experiences. What she was actually describing was a basic wallet interface that let people send and receive digital money, technology that had existed for over a decade. The questions started coming fast. What cryptographic protocols are you using for multi-signature validation? Diana asked. Brighton fumbled. We leverage industry-standard blockchain security methodologies. Which specific algorithms? Preston Investor from Peninsula Capital. Our technical team has implemented comprehensive cryptographic solutions, Brighton replied, which was corporate speak for I have no idea what you're talking about. That's when Diana cut to the chase. Ms. Walsh, can you explain how your platform handles SEC compliance for cryptocurrency to fiat transactions? Silence. Brighton stared at the camera like Diana had started speaking ancient Greek. We work closely with our legal team to ensure all regulatory requirements are properly addressed, Brighton finally managed. Who specifically handles the technical compliance reporting? Diana continued. The SEC requires real-time transaction auditing, cryptographic verification of fund transfers, and automated suspicious activity detection. Which team member oversees these protocols? More silence. Because Brighton didn't know that I personally managed every aspect of regulatory compliance. She didn't know that our SEC reporting systems required my cryptographic signature to generate valid audit trails. She didn't even know that federal banking regulations required designated technical officers to personally certify security protocols. Austin jumped in to save her. Jackson Rivers, our systems architect, handles technical compliance. Jackson, can you walk Diana through the specifics? That should have been my cue to smoothly transition into technical details. Professional handoff between marketing overview and technical deep dive. Standard investor presentation format. But Brighton panicked. Instead of yielding the floor professionally, she made a decision that revealed both her incompetence and her insecurity. Actually, Brighton interrupted, let me just briefly cover our technical housekeeping items first. Technical housekeeping. She called SEC compliance and federal security regulations housekeeping items, like cryptocurrency security was something you handled between ordering office supplies and scheduling maintenance calls. I unmuted myself. Diana, let me walk you through our actual security architecture. That's when my backup presentation system activated. While Brighton had been editing the shared folder, my authentication protocols triggered the independent backup nodes. Real technical documentation loaded instead of her cartoon graphics. Detailed cryptographic specifications, actual security protocols, the systems that made our platform worth $30 million in investment capital. Diana leaned forward. The other investors looked genuinely interested for the first time during the call. Finally, someone was explaining technology instead of marketing buzzwords. I was 3 minutes in, demonstrating our multi-signature wallet architecture and explaining how smart contract auditing prevented the kind of exploits that had destroyed other platforms. When Brighton lost control completely, Jackson, stop, you're fired, leave now, you're done here. She said it right there on the call, in front of Diana Stone, in front of every investor. No build-up, no professional transition, just raw panic disguised as executive authority. The silence that followed wasn't confusion. It was the sound of a $30 million investment evaporating in real time. I didn't argue, didn't make a scene, just reached forward, closed the laptop, and walked to my kitchen window. Made myself a coffee while they scrambled to understand what had just happened. Because here's what Brighton didn't realize, what none of them realized. I hadn't just been preparing technical presentations. I'd been preparing for exactly this moment. 25 years of experience had taught me that essential people become disposable the moment their contributions seem routine. But I'd also learned that truly essential people can't be disposed of without destroying the systems they built. Brighton had just fired the only person who could legally authorize their SEC compliance reporting, validate their security protocols, and maintain their federal banking certifications. She'd just killed the deal she was supposed to be selling. I sent one text to my lawyer while the coffee brewed. Execute clause 9.1b. No emoji, no explanation. He'd know what it meant. Back on the Zoom call, silence bloomed like spilled wine. Diana Stone didn't say anything for a full 10 seconds. An eternity in investor presentations. Then she spoke, and her voice was surgical precision. Why was Mr. Rivers removed mid-presentation? Austin started stammering about internal realignment and strategic restructuring. Corporate doublespeak, for we have no idea what just happened. Brighton jumped in with something about having everything covered internally, which was like claiming you could perform brain surgery after watching a YouTube video. Diana cut her off. Clause 4.2. Funding is contingent on Jackson Rivers' active participation in technical compliance through Series A, close. She paused, and I could hear papers rustling. Who authorized this termination? Nobody answered because nobody had authorized anything. Brighton had panicked and pulled the trigger on a loaded gun she didn't know was aimed at her own foot. The Peninsula Capital investor unmuted himself. Are we to understand that the technical compliance officer has been removed during due diligence proceedings? More silence. Because that's exactly what had happened, and everyone on that call understood the implications, except Brighton. What followed wasn't drama. It was mathematics. Diana's legal team sent an email at 11:17 a.m. One line: confirm Jackson Rivers' current status by 5 p.m. or funding is suspended. That email hit block secure like a power grid failure during a heat wave. Austin called an emergency all-hands meeting. Brighton showed up 20 minutes late, still acting like this was all a minor procedural issue. We can get him back, she announced to the room. It's just a contract technicality. I'll handle the negotiations. But here's what Brighton never understood about blockchain systems. They're built on cryptographic trust chains. You can't just restore access when you've broken the authentication protocols that secure the entire infrastructure. I'd designed our compliance systems the same way I'd built Navy communication networks, with proper security protocols and fail-safe mechanisms. When I was terminated, my access didn't just get disabled. It triggered automated lockouts across multiple critical systems. The regulatory reporting database required my cryptographic signature to generate valid SEC filings. The multi-signature wallet protocols needed my authentication key to authorize large transactions. The automated compliance monitoring system I'd built was tied to security certificates that only I could renew. They needed me to unlock it. I needed nothing from them. By 2 p.m., their CTO was frantically digging through system architecture documentation, discovering my digital signature on every major infrastructure component. The compliance director was calling regulatory contacts, realizing that half their federal filings were about to expire without proper technical authorization. Brighton tried damage control, sent out a company-wide message claiming I was one of several contributors and my work had been fully integrated into internal systems. Classic corporate misdirection. Then one of the senior engineers replied to the entire company, "That's factually incorrect. Our wallet infrastructure requires Jackson's cryptographic protocols for any transaction over $50,000. We can't even push security updates without his authorization keys." Another engineer added, "The SEC compliance system he built generates our regulatory reports automatically. Without his access, we'll be out of compliance within 72 hours. Austin finally called me at 4:30 p.m. I let it go to voicemail. His message was predictable: panic, apologies, desperate offers to work something out. Brighton had disappeared entirely, probably getting lectured by her father about tanking a $30 million deal. Diana Stone called me directly at 6 p.m. "Jackson," she said, "no pleasantries. I've spent the afternoon reviewing every line of technical documentation. I understand what you built. I also understand what happened today. I waited. That company cannot secure Series A funding without your authorization. I'd like to discuss terms for moving forward." Here's what I told her. I wasn't coming back as an employee. I was done with org charts and performance reviews and 29-year-old VPs who confused marketing buzzwords with technical expertise. I want full technical authority, I said. External contractor status through my own consulting firm. Any system or protocol I designed stays under my licensing control. Understood. I want retroactive compensation for the 6 months I spent rebuilding their infrastructure. Triple my original consulting rate plus equity participation. Done. And Brighton Walsh is gone. She's a security liability who doesn't understand the technology she's supposedly managing. Diana didn't hesitate. Ms. Walsh submitted her resignation this afternoon, effective immediately. The new contract arrived in my inbox at 8 p.m. 30 pages of legal documentation establishing Fortress Protocols LLC as the exclusive technical infrastructure partner for Block Secure Technologies. They got their funding. I got control. I never went back to their office. Didn't need to. My systems were distributed across multiple secure nodes, my authority was contractual, and my expertise was finally priced correctly. The press release came out Tuesday morning. Leadership restructure and technical advisory realignment. Corporate euphemisms for we fired the wrong person and almost destroyed everything. Austin quietly stepped down as CEO 2 weeks later. Diana's firm installed interim leadership that actually understood cryptocurrency regulations. Brighton's LinkedIn profile vanished completely. Industry rumors suggested her father wasn't pleased about the near miss with $30 million. Now I work from my home office overlooking Lake Austin. No commute, no meetings unless they involve actual technical decisions. Every system deployment requires my approval. Every compliance filing needs my digital signature. They don't say my name in company communications anymore. Just external infrastructure partner or licensed systems architect, which suits me perfectly. I'm not there to be their employee. I'm there to be essential. The cryptocurrency industry learned something that day. Technical competence isn't disposable decoration. When you build the foundation, you control the structure. Brighton Walsh learned it too, wherever she is now.